I decided to make this video today. It's been something I've been wanting to do for the last week or so, and I've tried to involve some other people, but for a couple different reasons it hasn't worked out and wasn't exactly appropriate. This week, it's really been on my heart to talk about relationships. Because it's something that I see all the time and something that really speaks to me. And this week alone, there's been a lot of events happening. And put this out there first. Anybody that hears anything that relates to their story, we talk. I respect it. We got names and anything. Not do that. My testimony or what God has put on my conscience. But I'll do so. That being said, this week there's been a lot of situations where relationships have seemed to be taking a turn for the worst, should I say. My own personal life, I've had some separation and struggles with building of relationships with either those from my past who hold on to what they've done or what I've done, or even new relationships where people are reserved or selfishly looking for personal gains and things like that that end up getting in the way of true actual growth and bonds with people. All week I've been hearing story after story of just misused and misguided and misunderstood relationships, and one being manipulated into doing what another wants and manipulating the other to try to get back what they want, and another being used and stumbling to their own faults just to have, another one retaliation and vengeance breeding on both sides, another desperation in what they want and deserve, and still yet another seeking their own personal pleasure and insistence on what it is that they get out of something, regardless of what they do to other people or what may even happen. And it seems to me like so many people are completely oblivious to what they're doing, but in the end, we know that they're not. We know that there's nothing we do every day that we don't recognize just how serious it is. At some point, we hear that voice in the back of our head, that voice of truth. Some like to say conscience, others like to know it as God. We know. He says you shouldn't do that, or why did you just say that, or why are you being this way, or look how far you're going, put yourself out there, or all the other millions of things that we hear, and we go, oh, I'll just do it my way, I'll just try it this way. Oh, but I like this. Oh, but it feels good right now. Oh, but it might work. Oh, it's okay, it's not that bad. The one thing about our shortcomings is when they come to people, it is that bad, because everything we do affects other people. And that's the part that bothers me the most, because when it comes to a relationship, we don't realize that it isn't about us. Relationships are not pleasure seeking. If you can't come into a situation perfectly content with who you are and satisfied with who you are, you're not going to find it in someone else, because all you're doing is looking for something else to fill your expectation of what you haven't been able to fill yet yourself. How can I go to someone who makes me feel better and expect them to all of a sudden have the answers to what I've spent my whole life trying to solve? Because they were able to do a couple of things just like I was able to do a couple of things for myself. And it seems like the more we love people, the more we expect out of them. I was reading something this morning that was kind of on the lines that why do the people we love the most end up hurting us the most? Because somehow the more we care, the more we think that they're going to do for us or that they can do for us. We automatically put this imaginary bubble around them and list of to-dos that they don't even see. And then when our expectations get so out of hand, we start to realize all the places where they didn't meet them and they didn't even know they existed. And even if they did, they could never do it because they're still just who they are. So while we're sitting there trying to create this relationship for our own benefit, all we're doing is creating a future separation. It's pretty sad to me that people don't even understand love, and we hear it all day long. We hear everybody's excuses, everybody's stories, everybody's definition. And the reality of it is that it's not that nobody knows what love is. It's that nobody wants to accept what love is. We know it's not about us. We know that all those things we give and all those things we do when the moment calls, all those places we put ourselves out in, they weren't for us. But we feel entitled and we feel owed. And that puts us in that position of not only expectation and disappointment, but also in a place where we begin to retaliate or manipulate. Or even worse, try to give up on it and walk away from it. And that to me is the worst thing, because not only do we convince ourselves that love doesn't exist, but then we convince ourselves there's nothing we can do about it. And we become exactly what we hate. I was thinking about this picture I drew the other day, and it's Jesus on a cross. And I saw something somebody else drew and was just thinking in my head what it meant. And while I'm thinking about my picture, I was sitting there thinking, you know, it just shows him in the pain and the agony of him just laying there on the cross, nailed to the cross, and it's got this expression on his face. It's just like they just hit the hammer and the nail into his hand. And it's like mid-scream, and the thing that came to mind is, what would you do for someone you love? That's what I see when I see that picture. What would you do? Not what would I do to be loved. Not what would I pay. Not what would I try to earn, but what would I do to love somebody else? What is it to truly live in harmony and unity with each other and with everyone? We sit and we go, oh yeah, there's no love, but it's because this one won't do for me and that one won't do for me and this one didn't do this, and in the past he did that, and once he made a mistake, and we look at all of these hundreds of reasons why. And very few times do we look and say, what can I do to add to that? You look at that saying I've heard so many times, and it really, I don't even know what it was meant for, but about being the change you want to see in the world rather than trying to change the world. If we're love, and there's no promise to get love from anybody, then the only promise to have love is the love that we give. The only experience that we have in love is when we actually give love and we know where it comes from. We know what its value is. We know what its purpose was. The only one who truly recognizes any love is the one who gives it. Because you're the only one that can understand what it took to give and the need that you saw. The offering that it was. You know, I'm not one to say that I've been perfect in anything, and that's not even why I say these things or why I come on here. I feel that God has given me a lot of things and a lot of experience, and daily I see things that I think most people see, but they just don't stop and say because they're just not used to it, or they don't have people around to talk like that, or I don't know, there's probably a million reasons. But the priority is the fact that if somebody's not saying it, then we're just going to keep continuing that it's not there, and it's just going to keep continuing to get worse. We're going to keep manipulating what it really means to us until either we no longer even understand it at all, just like we kind of do with the image of God. We just manipulated it and assumed and transformed it to fit who we were and what we wanted to be so many times that most people don't even understand who God is anymore. Most people go off what they've heard or what they've seen on TV about what's really going on in church, and they don't even listen. To the point that even most preachers don't even know what they're preaching about just because it sounds good. It's like the next big thing next to being a kindergarten teacher or a guidance counselor. It's be a minister and not actually know what we're talking about. It's like how many people are getting involved in relationships and don't even know what a relationship is. It's not the person who loves you the most in this world. It's not the person that makes you the happiest or gives you the most things. It's not the prettiest person. It's none of the things that we've really shallowly placed on this situation, because none of that stuff matters. You're not going out and dating. Dating is the most, I don't even want to say humorous thing to me, because it's really sick. We go out fishing for this idea that we have of our perfect mate, that its origins, who knows where they come from, whether it's from music or TV or things we saw or things we dreamed or things we need, a combination of all of these things, who knows? But the fact that we go out searching for this image in our mind, unsatisfied until we get it, or overwhelmed by somebody who seems to have it or seems to be close and might have some different things, until we get through that puppy dog stage and start to realize they're not the exact image that you had, or until that image starts to change over time as you see that they had what your limitations were already at, and now you're starting to see beyond that to other things you want and other things you need as you grow, especially as you grow together. Or don't grow. We look at all these things that we're supposed to be doing, and all the things we're supposed to be saying, and all the things we're supposed to be earning, and the huge house and the nice car, and let's work on our careers. Let's have everything. And then we'll just pretend that our life is perfect because we have everything and it looks good on the outside. But we'll sit at home and we'll bicker and we'll fight and we'll be empty. Or we'll separate ourselves, or we'll cheat on each other. Or we'll focus on just the seduction of the relationship until the seduction isn't there. Until the pleasure isn't so powerful, that fire burns out, or whatever people like to say. And then we quit. Then we say, hey, you stood by my side for all of these years, but you're not worth it anymore. And we prove not only the value of our love, but the understanding of our love. As we try to prove that somebody else isn't so special, all we're doing is proving that we don't understand commitment. And that's a whole nother thing in itself. It's
What's on the menu at your home tonight?
I don't even know how to explain the fact that so many people consider commitment temporary. It's an oxymoron. How we can say that we'll be committed until we're not, or until something happens, or until we change our mind, or until we're displeased, or we're distracted. And then we'll go on kicking ourselves, or hanging ourselves, or hiding ourselves, or confusing ourselves, based on a decision we made that we don't want to undo. And it's not that we can undo anything literally, but when we took a certain mindset and carried that on, it's that mindset that continues to grow and to spread through our veins. It's what those changes literally are. You know, when we say, you know, people have changed over time, you know, sometimes it's very apparent and sometimes not so much. You know, sometimes that's because the people around you are changing the same ways, or because you're standing right next to them. It's just like watching yourself age. It's my favorite explanation of it. You can't watch yourself age. I can look at myself 55,000 times a day for the next 50 years, and I'm not going to remember the stage it was before, because it happens so much, so often, and so clear. You just don't see all the little things that have happened in it. Now, you might be able to look at something now and see it 10 years ago, but it's no different for the family standing next to you either, or the friends next to you either, that have been changing along your side and feeding off those things that you did or didn't do, and those words that you said or didn't say. You don't realize it, but the same leadership that people deny or rebel against is the same leadership that we carry every day in our groups of friends and in our families. And the saddest part is that we don't take responsibility for that leadership. We don't think about how heavy those decisions might be, because there might be 55,000 of them a day that we didn't take serious. And as that day ends, the only one that stands out to us is the biggest one. And that the week is the only one is the biggest one. And that month, it's the biggest one. And that year, it's the biggest one. And then we look back over the 10 years, and it's still only the biggest one, and not those 10 million choices we made in between that have affected our lives and every life around us. Because all we cared about was that self-seeking, self-pleasure, self-love that we're taught every day. Focus on you. Don't worry about anybody else. Don't care about it. That's not fun. That's not me. I was just walking this morning on my meditation, and I passed this van, and it was an advertisement for the Army. It said, "Be the best leader you can be." And on the other side it says, "Do you have what it takes to make the cut?" And I remember back, I was about 17, 18. I remember seeing those signs. And at one point in my life, I looked at those and I said, oh my God, this is the only way out. This is the only way I'm going to be able to save myself. It's the only way I'm going to be able to change. It's the only way I'm going to be able to prevent all the things that are happening around me. I need to do this. Because that's where people are going. That's what people are doing when they really want discipline, when they really want order, when they really want positivity. Now I look at that same van and I go, yeah, do I have what it takes to be a leader? To lead people into death and destruction? To stand side by side with people that are willing to hurt somebody else to get what they want? People that are anxious to jump up and go to war, but aren't anxious to jump up and pick up somebody off the street or give somebody a meal. And then I look at the other side, it says, are you good enough to make the cut? And it just echoes again that same ignorant idea that somebody has to be good enough for this, that they weren't already created in their perfection. That even if we should be desiring to make them better and not to make them prove their worth. Because they don't have to prove their worth to survive. They don't have to prove their worth to live. And they don't have to prove what they look like to watch themselves age. Or for us to watch them. And thank God I don't even have to prove it to God that I have to do something. For him to have created me. I don't have to meet up to some standard. And it's not so simple as saying, oh yeah, I get it, this is all it is, and that's enough. That's not living for me. That's not living for God. That's not the change. That's me saying that I'm okay with my ignorance. And my ignorance is still okay because I'm saved and I'm fine. And I don't have to figure out what the truth is. I don't have to figure out what's really happening around me. I don't have to put in anything. I can just keep on doing what I'm doing. I can just keep on accepting my level of understanding because I feel that that's okay. Because in my satisfaction, I'm attempting to meet the same thing that I've set out all my life to try to meet and I can't meet. So my own insanity is telling me that I can continue on this path that I've always had that doesn't work. And for those that are thinking it's working, majority of them are just closer than others, or so far away that they can't even tell anyone. Now, I was involved in a relationship where I gave everything I had, everything I was, and I got frustrated because I had expectations too that I didn't get. And I had to come to the realization that it wasn't that there was anything wrong with that person. As much as she did, that wasn't priority. The priority was that no matter who she was, I expected her to be something. And I let myself down. I frustrated myself. And I blamed her. And it was a constant battle because a lot of the time that I was fighting for her, it was about her. But when it got difficult and I couldn't understand the battle of somebody else, it became about me. Because I didn't want to understand. Because I didn't want to embrace. Because I had my own idea, my own picture, my own image. And it wasn't that we all have our own image. And we just have to find the one that works for us so that we all have our own image and we're just all different. That's not true. That's avoidance. That's saying that we really don't know the next step and we're going to spend the rest of our time circle reasoning and dancing around the subject because we don't want to stand bold. We don't want to seek truth because everything we have, we just repeat to each other and we think that's all it is. We think because successful people repeat something, it makes them smarter than us. We think because those who aren't accepted in society may have something good to say that it's invaluable. We think that people who've made mistakes don't have a place in this world. And we think that people who live differently than us could never understand us. One of my blessings is being able to go through so many different experiences, good and bad, and right and wrong, and into extremes. And it's helped me to really see a balance of what it's like to be on the bottom of the ladder and on the top of the ladder, and in a cage and out of the cage and putting people in the cage, and being abused and being the abuser, and being free and being chained by things. And one of the greatest things I learned in my entire life is how valuable truth is. It's not just a room. The same way love is not just a room. Love does exist. And we're at a point in our lives where we all have hope in it. We all try to embrace it. But not all of us recognize what it is. It's very easy to confuse love and lust, because we automatically assume lust is sexual, when lust is just seeking pleasure for ourselves. And anytime we're seeking pleasure, we've already admitted that we're not content. It's just like we seek entertainment for our day, or a month, or our holidays, or our parties, or our pastimes. It's like we're killing time. You know, if it'd be one thing if you're tired, or it's one thing if you're just enjoying life. It's another thing when you're killing time. When your entertainment is to take you away from your life. When your vacation is your escape. When your partners help you forget, or are supposed to. That's not family. It's not love. Our ego isn't this pride about us. It's literally not pride. It is self-awareness. It's when you begin to realize who you are and what you are, what you like and what you don't like, what you fear and what you don't fear, what you love, what you lust, what you don't understand. That's your ego. That's the literal definition of the ego. The moment you become aware of self. Not how important. Not how arrogant. Everybody has it. In some ways, it's probably confused with our conscience. Because it's all of those combined decisions that cause us to think the way that we think. But even regardless of the way that we think, the Spirit controls us, and the voice of truth is always inside of us, telling what's real and what's right. Our conscience isn't the one coming up with those ideas next to it, and those options next to it, and those justifications next to it. That's our thinking. That's our spirit. That's our education. That's our wisdom at its finest, or at its worst, depending on how you use it. But the voice of truth, since the moment we could crawl, since the first time we heard something in the back of our head say, don't do that, mama won't like this, daddy won't like that, don't touch that, don't steal that. Or whatever it is, don't chase that guy. Don't abuse that girl. The same way when we do something wrong and we turn around and we go, man, I shouldn't have done that. And a lot of people like to say they don't have regrets. They do. But after they hear that voice of truth tell them what's wrong, their best thinking justifies. And then just like in my situation with my relationship, when that best thinking kicks in, even if what you have done feels like it's better, feels like you escaped, wherever you denied that voice, whatever decision you made to do the opposite of that truth, that's where you went wrong. I was left behind because I didn't meet expectations. I was tortured because I didn't meet expectations. I suffered vengeance, lies, manipulation, seclusion, literally even left on my deathbed. So that voice would be silenced by the person who did it. But it doesn't take away the truth. It doesn't take away the reality of what was really going on. It doesn't justify anything more than our own ego and our own pride and our own desire, which has no value. All those things we fear and hate and avoid and like and dislike, all of the things that we live our lives building our realities around and through, don't change reality. The reality is the facts of the situation on both ends are what happened. The reality is everything we see around us every day, whether we see it in our own perception or not, is reality. I can convince myself of whatever I want. You can convince yourself of whatever you want and all of the people around you. But the truth is that when we sit back and we look at ourselves inside, we know what's real. Even if we refuse to look in the mirror for a couple of days or a couple of months or a year or 2 years, or however long it takes to wake up and say, oh my God, what did I do? Because sometimes those things have been gone for so long, we don't even see them anymore. Sometimes we don't know how many thousands of times our faces have changed over the years, and we start to put these little things that we've done, all those little shortcomings, in little boxes and little back pockets. And it's just like pulling out a handful of clutter out of your pocket or out of your car or out of your purse. Eventually you don't care how important that one little thing was that you saved when you look at 1,000 of those little things you saved. You just throw it aside again, not realizing what it's done to your life. Not realizing what those 5,000 or 5 million little decisions did and how many left turns you made because of that. And I look at not only my life, but those around me as I watch them make the same decisions, and as I do the best that I can to be accountable for my own salvation. I pray every day that those people around me get to see themselves. Because the only hope of them ever realizing their salvation is recognizing their brokenness. And it isn't just being broken in a situation and hitting rock bottom. For some people, it's a little more obvious to them. But recognizing your brokenness sometimes is just recognizing in your humility what the truth really is. And if something doesn't expose that truth in you, chances are it's not true. And the funniest thing that I learned is that no matter how crazy the story is, no matter what the explanation, no matter how many doctors, no matter how many people, no matter how many supporters across the country or the world an idea has, even in the most corrupt weakness, God uses it to show us the truth. Because eventually, when the truth is found, it's going to get exposed. Eventually, when we begin to see what's really happening, it gets exposed. Just like when we live in those relationships for so long and we start to see that it doesn't work or why it's not working, eventually we can see. Because it wasn't founded on what we thought it was founded on. And now, we committed to a situation that we didn't know what it was we were committing to. And sadly, a lot of people run instead of adding to their life the part that they just learned. Because that same response to our ego, the fear, the love, the fight, the run, the hide, the deny, what do I like, what do I want, what do I don't like, what angers me, what upsets me, that reaction to run, to hide, to escape, to try to rebel or deny what's really happening, the same rebellious state that Scripture tells us is who we are as a people, that begins to take hold. So it comes down to the reality that it's not just relationships, it's us. It's us and our relationship with the world, with God, with everything. If we don't have a genuine care and concern, if we are not truly just giving for the sake of giving, for grace, for love itself, the way love was given to us, the same way this world was given to us. We didn't have to do anything to earn this. We were born into it. We didn't have to pay anything. We didn't have to say anything. We didn't have to pray anything. It was given to us, regardless of how foolish we were, regardless of how smart or how paid or how ignorant we were, regardless of how angry or frustrated or concerned or scared or seduced we were. So when I go into a situation or any relationship, from the moment I begin speaking to somebody, I give everything that I have, everything that I am. And the moment that I hold back, the moment that I lie, the moment that I leave something out, I've already decided that that isn't worth it to me, and I've stopped giving love. And I think one of the greatest problems that we have is the ability to lie to each other, because at the moment that we lie to each other, we've lied to ourselves and we no longer have touch with reality. So at the very root of everything, you have to have truth in itself. You have to have truth in your life. You have to stop lying. Because if you're lying to yourself about what you're doing there, you're obviously lying to the people around you. And if you're lying to the people around you, then something's not right with the way that you're thinking. And instead of standing on it, instead of being bold, instead of having faith or trusting in what you know inside to be different than what's going on around you, instead of having faith in the spiritual, you now put all your trust in a perception of the physical. Which, just like every science and psychology we've ever studied, we can't tell what something is by looking at it. You can't. But what's inside of us has never lied to us. That voice of truth, that conscience, God's voice. I've never met a single person in this world that could tell me that that voice didn't tell them when they were doing something wrong that it wasn't right. I never met a single person that couldn't say, I didn't know better. Maybe I didn't know exactly. Maybe my wisdom hadn't grown quite as far. But not one person can say they didn't recognize a single wrong in the wrong they were doing. But it's the fact that we can look at each other and justify those wrongs. That we can sit here and go, it's okay because we all do something, so let's just forget it ever happened. Like those 55,000 other things I forgot that happened today. Because they're not going to affect me, and they're not going to affect you. Until tomorrow, when it's 10,000. Or the next day when it's 50,000. Or the next day when it's 1 million. Or a year from now when it's 10 million things that I've done that I've forgotten about that didn't matter. But I don't realize that one left turn might not make a huge decision until you realize 10 years later or 10 miles later that that one step to the left took you miles off your destination. And if your destination is hope and peace and happiness and love and all the things that people say they want out of life, that little one decision makes a difference. Every decision makes a difference. The forgiveness is the fact that we still have the opportunity to continue to do that. And the grace and mercy that God has given us to not only continue to give, but the mercy to have it established that we are able to continue to live in this mercy. We're able to continue to act even though we continue to make mistakes. And even at our best walk, when we strive onto perfection and try to continue on this growth, I don't have to worry about that one left turn being off the edge of the cliff. Because even though it literally is, and I'm living dead, like Scripture says, you're already dead. Not that you're dying, not that you're gonna die if you don't do this right, but you're already dead because you've already made that left turn at the moment you had self-awareness. The first time you said, I don't like something, and you pushed it away, or someone away. The first time you decided to chase a lust, just like in the garden eating off the tree when we chase that lust, or in Egypt when we start keeping our idols, or in our entertainment, or in our seduction. The moment you chase personal pleasure, you don't realize that it already exists everywhere. We don't give it back like everything else in the world. We look at things, we look at the animals, and they make us so happy. But they didn't set out for the day to make us happy. They didn't plan in their heart and learn who you were, how to make you smile. They just were the best that they could be because they don't know anything. Because they are what they were created to be. So when I set out to create a relationship, I'm already failed. When I set out to date or to meet a friend that's just like me or find somebody that I can talk to, I've already failed. When I say that I'm in the church and I can't reach out to those outside of the church because they're not like us, I've already failed. Just like if I'm outside of the church and I refuse to go to the church because they live over here and up here and they're not like me, they'll never understand. I've already failed because my expectations have already taken over the reality in my perception of the world. I've already decided that everything around me has to live up to a certain standard in order to make me happy. Because I'm not content. Because I'm not being the best me I can. So the question is today, what are you giving to your relationships? Because that's what you receive. And not that you receive it from them. You receive it from your experience. By your obedience. By your offering. Not your sacrifice. We look at Christ and say that he was the sacrifice for our sins, the payment for our sins. Do we ever look at that and say that he was the offering? Do we look at his heart? Or do we dehumanize him and say, you know what? I never really thought about what he was feeling when he did that. I never thought about what it must take to let somebody hang me on the cross to prove to them I love them. But what about all the things that we've done to other people while they were trying to prove to us that they loved us? Or all the things that we've done for other people trying to prove to them and seeing what it's like to be ignored, or abused, or abandoned, or neglected, or punished, or misunderstood, to be seduced for what we have instead of enjoyed for it. What was Christ really for? He spent his whole life trying to tell us how much he loved us. showing us in every physical, spiritual, emotional, psychological example that he could. And all we kept doing was beating him, abusing him, testing him, threatening him, asking him to prove it. Give me a sign, give me an idea. Tell me why what you're saying is true and why you have the right to say it to me. And he just looked. He said, I am what you say I am. He kept giving what we needed, even when we didn't see. Even when the smartest of the smart stood against him and said, you're not what you say you are, and they knew who he said he was supposed to be. Those who were on the top of the list that understood more than all of us, that were supposed to be the most devout over all of us, were the ones that killed him. But yet we still sit back and say, okay, this isn't God. This isn't anybody special. But who do you know that will sit back and let you do anything you want to do to them? Just to give you something you need, whether you understand it or not. I spend most of my life trying to show people what love is. Every day of my life, I get insulted, I get neglected, I get abused, I get abandoned. But I don't stop. At the end of the week, I cry over how tired my hands are from trying to do this. Not about what I don't have. Because I'm content with that. Because the only way that we're going to see love in the world is if we are that love. So whatever you're going through in your relationship, give what you like to receive, regardless of what you receive. That's what your Father did. That's what the man that all of this moral came from, that didn't exist before, because we didn't get it until we had somebody to compare it to. That's how we know. Because who else before that have we ever said spent his life trying to portray love, trying to teach love, sacrificing for love day in and day out? We don't compare anybody else in history to him. So no matter what, he has already done something that no one else has done. Because even Abraham, even all of the other religions and scriptures and all of the other things you want to look at, none of them did that entirely. None of them walked a perfect life, but everything they did